All right, ready to dive deep. Today, we're tackling Friedrich Nietzsche.
Ooh, Nietzsche. Always a good time.
He's a thinker who really pushes us, you know, to become the best versions of ourselves. You know, we asked for listener suggestions and you sent in this YouTube video, Become the Person You Were Born to Be.
Oh, yeah, I saw that one. From the Psyche channel.
That's the one. And I think it's the perfect jumping off point for today. What do you say we unpack some Nietzsche and see what gems we can unearth?
Let's do it.
So one of the things that always strikes me about Nietzsche is his idea that so many of us never truly reach our full potential.
That we settle for a kind of comfortable mediocrity.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we're handed this script at birth, right? All these expectations, norms, and we just follow along. Have you ever felt that? Like there's this stronger, truer self inside just waiting to break free?
Oh, absolutely. I think most of us have had those moments. You know, Nietzsche saw that kind of conformity as a real trap. He was all about challenging those inherited scripts, shaking things up, creating your own path.
He definitely wasn't afraid to ruffle some feathers. I mean, take his idea that suffering shouldn't be avoided, but embraced. It goes against everything we're usually taught.
It's so easy to misunderstand that famous quote, you know, what does not kill me makes me stronger. It's not about glorifying suffering, more like recognizing those tough experiences, the setbacks, the failures, they can actually be where our resilience and true character are formed.
It makes you think about the tough times, those moments you didn't think you'd get through, but somehow you did. And you came out, well, stronger on the other side.
Right. Maybe even a little wiser, a little more fearless.
And that kind of ties in with the whole idea that we create our own meaning in life. There's no pre-written destiny. We're the artists of our own lives.
Absolutely. Life is a canvas, and we get to paint our own masterpiece, both exhilarating and terrifying at the same time. I mean, the freedom is incredible, but it puts the pressure on it, you know, to make sure we're living authentically, living intentionally.
That's where Nietzsche's idea of the herd mentality comes into play. It's so easy to get swept up in following the crowd, accepting their values, their beliefs, without ever really questioning if they're truly our own.
Right. It's like going with the flow. Feels safe and comfortable, but could lead us further and further away from who we really are.
So how do we even begin to separate from that herd mentality? I mean, it's so ingrained in us, isn't it? To fit in, to follow the rules.
It's definitely a challenge, but it starts with cultivating that critical thinking, that willingness to question, to challenge those inherited beliefs. And sometimes you got to have the courage to stand alone when your values demand it. Nietzsche definitely wouldn't shy away from that.
So how do we start peeling back those layers, all those external influences and expectations that have shaped us? If we can strip all that away, who would we be? What would our true value?
Well, that's the essence of self-awareness, isn't it? A cornerstone of Nietzsche's philosophy. He called this process of self-discovery and challenge self-overcoming. So it's not just about recognizing those limitations, but actively working to move beyond them.
Constantly striving, pushing ourselves to evolve, to become stronger, wiser, more authentic versions of ourselves. Pretty powerful concept.
Oh, it is. And there's this real danger, you know, of falling into a victim mentality. It's easy to blame our circumstances, our past, other people for why we haven't achieved what we want or why we aren't fulfilled.
Well, that blame game, insidious, right? It keeps us stuck, powerless.
Exactly. Nietzsche was all about taking radical responsibility for our. It's about recognizing that we always have the power to choose our response, even when life throws us curveballs.
And speaking of curveballs, Nietzsche had a lot to say about fear. He didn't exactly see it as the enemy.
No, definitely not. More like a test, a challenge to be mastered. It's like fear is often that gatekeeper, you know, standing between us and the extraordinary lives we could be living. So instead of avoiding it, he's all about confronting, understanding it, and ultimately overcoming it.
It's so easy to fall into that trap, though. Letting fear dictate our choice keeps us small and safe, but maybe that's not where the real growth happens. What are some of those gatekeeper fears you've encountered in your own life?
For me, it was the fear of failure, definitely, of putting myself out there, risking judgment. But, you know, once I really examined it, I realized it was holding me back from pursuing my true passion.
It's like by shining a light on it, fear loses its power over us.
Often, yeah. But there's another trap Nietzsche warned about, even more insidious than fear: resentment, that bitterness, that blame we hold on, usually toward others for our own shortcomings or misfortunes.
Ooh, resentment, that's a tough.
It really is, and it's like poison. It eats away at our potential, keeps us focused on the past, on things we can't control, instead of using that energy to create a better future.
So how do we combat that?
It goes back to personal responsibility. When we let go of blame, when we truly own our lives, we reclaim our power, and we become active participants in shaping our own destiny.
Instead of being victims of it.
Exactly, and that can be such a powerful shift.
So Nietzsche had this fascinating kind of terrifying concept called eternal recurrence.
Oh, yeah, that one. It'll really make you think.
Imagine living your life over and over exactly as it is for all eternity. Every choice, every action, every joy, every sorrow, on repeat.
Forever. So the question is, would you be content with the life you're living right now if you had to relive it forever?
It's like a cosmic wake-up call, making sure we're not just sleepwalking through life, but actively creating a life we actually want to experience.
Exactly. And that brings us to one of the most intriguing and often misunderstood parts of Nietzsche's philosophy, the Übermensch.
Okay, let's unpack this one. It's often translated as Superman, but it's so much more than that, isn't it?
It's not about tights and capes. It's about transcending limitations, creating your own values, and really mastering yourself and your life.
So it's not a destination, but a journey, a constant process of becoming the best possible version of ourselves.
Yeah. And it's a journey available to everyone. We all have that potential, that spark of the Übermensch waiting to be ignited.
This idea of the Übermensch, it really ties back to breaking free from the herd, doesn't it? Having the courage to define your own path, to live according to your own compass no matter what society says.
Absolutely. The Übermensch isn't bound by conventional rules or expectations. It's all about forging your own path, driven by your own sense of purpose and meaning.
It's about recognizing the power we have to shape our destiny and not letting fear or societal pressure hold us back from our full potential. This is really inspiring stuff. What do you think?
It really is. It's about embracing the struggle, the uncertainty, and the discomfort that come with real growth and transformation. Those challenges, they're not obstacles, but opportunities.
So what does this all mean for our listeners out there? How can they take these ideas and actually apply them?
Well, it all starts with some tough questions, you know? Are you living authentically? Are you pursuing what truly lights you up? What changes can you make starting today to become the...
You're not alone on this journey. We all have that strength within us, that potential.
It's there, just waiting to be unleashed. It's like we can each sculpt a masterpiece, out of our lives. But it takes conscious effort, right, to chip away at all the stuff holding us back, those limitations, fears, all that.
So we become the artists of our own lives, intentionally shaping who we are and what we experience. It's kind of a big shift in thinking.
Totally. And one of the most powerful tools for that, I think, is our mindset. It's not just about what happens, but how we interpret it, the stories we tell ourselves. That's huge.
So two people could face the same hardship, but one comes out stronger while the other, falls apart. And it's all about mindset.
Exactly. It's like one person might see it as a tragedy, right? A reason to give up, while the other sees it as a lesson, fuel for growth.
It's not about being fake positive, though. More about recognizing that we have a choice.
Always. We have a choice in how we frame what we go through, and that's powerful.
Definitely resonates with Nietzsche's emphasis on personal responsibility. We can't always control what happens to us.
No.
But we can control our reactions, our interpretations.
That's where true empowerment comes in. To choose, do we see ourselves as victims, or do we choose to become something more, to find meaning, even in those tough times?
It's a choice.
Yeah.
Which reminds me of another Nietzsche concept, one that's a little bit tricky for me. This whole amor fati thing, love of fate, that's intense.
It is. It's about embracing it all, the good, the bad, the beautiful, the ugly. It's all part of the journey. And it's essential. You can't just pick and choose the pleasant parts.
So instead of fighting against the tough stuff, the setbacks, we just say yes, embrace it.
It's about saying yes to life, in all its messiness, and trusting that even the most difficult experiences have something to teach us.
So we're not just being passive, are we?
Right. We're approaching life from a place of accept. That's a different kind of strength.
So instead of constantly fighting the current, we kind of learn to flow with it.
Yeah, like finding the opportunities, even within the challenges. It sounds a little crazy, but when you can actually do it, it brings a lot of peace, even joy.
I can see it.
And it frees up a lot of energy. All that energy you were using to resist, to deny, you can put it towards something else, toward growth, creativity, living fully.
It sounds great in theory. But how do we even begin to cultivate this amor fati? It seems almost superhuman.
It's definitely a practice. It's not like you just flick a switch.
Yeah.
Just start by paying attention. Notice that resistance, the judgments, that urge to control everything. Can you practice acceptance, even in small moments?
So like, I spill my coffee, miss my train.
Yeah. And instead of freaking out, can you find the humor in it? See it as just a blip. It's all about perspective.
Zooming out.
Right.
Seeing things from a wider lens.
And trusting that you're exactly where you need to be.
Even if we can't see the full picture.
Exactly. And remember, it takes time. There will be times it's easier than others. It's a lifelong thing.
It sounds a lot like the whole Übermensch concept we were discussing earlier. Both require so much self-mastery, this willingness to see the bigger picture.
Yeah, I think you're right. Both amor fati and the Übermensch are about becoming more than we are now, pushing those bounds, living with intention and awareness. And that's something most people don't ever even think about.
It's a challenge,
yeah,
but a really exciting one. It's like we have this power to become the authors of our own lives.
To embrace the whole journey, all the messiness.
That's where the adventure is. Stepping outside those comfort zones, those pre-written scripts, and going into the unknown.
Yeah.
It's kind of scary, but
that's where the good stuff is. That's where you discover who you truly are, what you're really capable.
and that feeling of discovery, that's what makes life worth living.
I think so. It's available to all of us, but you got to be willing to do the work, to challenge yourself.
To keep reaching for that higher potential.
Yeah.
So for our listeners who are on that journey, who are trying to figure all of this out, what's one practical thing they can start doing today?
Ooh, that's a good question. There's no one right answer because everyone's path is unique, but I'd say start paying attention to how you talk to yourself.
That inner critic.
Yeah. Notice when you're being negative, judgmental, fearful, and just try to gently shift those thoughts.
So instead of beating ourselves up over mistakes,
Right.
we can approach them with curiosity, with compassion, maybe even a little humor.
Exactly. It's about being kind to ourselves, you know? We're all works in progress.
And maybe that kindness, that acceptance is the key to unlocking our full potential.
You might be onto something there.
It feels like we're talking about more than just changing a few habits. This is like a total transformation, right?
Yeah, I think so. It's about realizing we have more power than we think. We can just let life happen, or we can actually shape it, create it.
That's what makes Nietzsche so powerful.
Yeah.
It's not just about understanding his ideas, it's about living them,
Yeah.
letting them change how we see ourselves and the whole world.
And a big part of that is understanding how powerful our perception is. The way we see things, the stories we tell ourselves, that's huge.
It's not just about what happens, but how we interpret it.
Right. Two people could go through the exact same thing, but one comes out stronger, wiser, while the other stays stuck in negative.
It all boils down to how we view the world, that internal narrative.
Yeah.
Which of course takes us back to personal responsibility. Like we said before, we can't control everything that happens,
Yeah.
but we can control how we react,
Yeah.
how we interpret it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where the real power is. Choosing how to respond instead of just reacting. Do we choose anger, fear, or do we choose courage, compassion, and use the experience to learn, to grow?
It's like every moment we're at a fork in the road.
Mm-hmm.
And the path we choose, it doesn't just shape that one moment, it shapes who we become.
And that's both empowering and a little scary. Knowing how much power we actually have, our choices, they matter, they have consequences.
Mhm.
But that also means we can create a life that actually means
A life that reflects who we really are, what we want.
exactly. And it all ties back to what we were talking about before with amor fati, that radical acceptance.
Oh yeah. When we stop resisting, when we can just be present, that's when things open up.
You free up all this energy, right, that you were using to fight, to deny what is, and you can put that energy towards something else, creating, growing, becoming the best version of yourself.
So it's not about passively letting things happen. It's about seeing the opportunity and the challenge.
Right, like what can you learn from this? How can this make you stronger?
I can see how powerful that could be. But it's got to be a lifelong process, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we all fall back into old patterns sometimes.
Oh, for sure. It's a practice. You're not going to get it perfect every time.
The key is to keep practicing.
Yeah. Keep reminding yourself.
And be kind to yourself along. Recognize that we're all works in progress.
That's huge.
And maybe that kindness, that self-compassion is actually how we unlock that potential, that Übermensch within each of us.
I like that. I think you're right. So as we wrap this up, what's one thing our listeners can take away? What's one thing they can do starting today?
Yeah, what one thing can they do to start living more intentionally, more authentically?
I'd say pay attention to that self-talk. You know, notice when you're being critical, judgmental, when you're letting fear take over, and then consciously shift.
Remind yourself that you're capable, that you're resilient.
Yeah, that you have the power to choose.
It's about taking back that control, that agency, shaping our life instead of letting life shape us.
Exactly. It's a journey, not a race, though. Remember that. Be patient, celebrate those small wins, and keep striving.
What a great way to wrap up this deep dive. This has been so insightful, so inspiring. And to our listeners, we hope this has given you some food for thought, some new tools, some new possibilities.
Yeah. And remember, it's all about exploration. Keep asking questions, keep pushing yourself, and become the person you were meant to be.
Until next time, keep diving deep.